Okay, good afternoon guys. Welcome to today's CAD webinar hosted by Cadgroup Australia. This is the introduction to Vault Professional 2014, presented by myself, Ian Cross, Consulting Specialist at Cadgroup Australia. Okay, so just a little bit of a look into what we're going to be covering today. So I'm going to start off just by talking a little bit about what is Vault. So just giving you a bit of a heads up on what Vault's all about, what it can do for you as a business. Then I'm just going to have a little bit of a chat about the difference between a Vault server and a Vault client. So, when you speak to any Cadgroup representative about what Vault is, they talk about a Vault server and a Vault client. Just clearing up a few thoughts on what all that's all about. I'm then going to have a little bit of a chat about copy design. It's one of the most commonly used functions within any version of Vault. So I'm just going to have a little bit of a chat about that. The next thing I would like to talk about is versions and revisions, because this is a bit of a grey area when it comes to Vault. A lot of people are a bit uncertain about what a version is, what a revision is, and what the difference is between them. So I'm going to have a little bit of a talk about that. Then we're going to move on to categories and rules and how they work and how benefit your business. And then on to life cycles, going through all the different states and how categories, life cycles, and revisions all work together. I'm then going to launch up Autodesk Vault. We're going to have take a bit of a tour around the interface and show you where everything is. I'm going to look at a few permissions, setting up different roles for different users. A few different sort of file relationships and how to navigate around the Vault environment. And then I'm going to put an assembly and some parts through a bit of a test run and show you how everything works together. Okay, so first of all, let's talk a little bit about what is Autodesk Vault. So in a nutshell, Autodesk Vault software, it securely stores and manages your engineering information, your design data, and your documents, thus pretty much shortening your design to manufacturing process. It helps your design teams, your engineering teams, and your manufacturing departments collaborate and share their digital prototyping information. And with all of its sort of multi-site tools, it helps connect work groups across discrete locations. It could be around Australia or it could be around the world. And it makes sharing this information a whole lot easier. Vault Professional gives your design departments the tools they need to track things like engineering change orders, or ECOs as they're normally called within Vault. Now, I must point out that this is a two-part webinar, and ECOs will be covered on the second part of the webinar, which is in 2 weeks' time. You can find more details on the Cadgroup website. So Vault Professional also gives the design departments the tools they need to manage their bills of material, and also it can promote earlier collaboration through integrations with your manufacturing business systems, such as your ERP. Okay, so it's an overall data management software which links all of your design departments, your engineering, your manufacturing together, so they're all sharing the same information and sort of making your product get to market faster. Now, when we talk about Vault, we talk about a Vault client and a Vault server. Now, excuse me, I'm going to first of all talk about the Vault server. So, what is a Vault server? Now, the server consists of two things. It's the hardware and the software. So, first of all, the hardware, be it a computer/server, and also the software required to manage the Vault itself and the transactions between the physical Vault and the Vault clients. Now, it can be stored on a single user PC or on a shared workstation to manage multiple users. The server includes a secure database that stores file properties and file relationships, so you can quickly search across your designs or determine where the files are, who's done what to them, and what state they're currently at. It also contains a secure file store where all the versions of your designs are stored. You can create, manage, and maintain vaults from inside the Autodesk Data Management software, which commonly known as the ADMS. That is the software that is installed on your server. So, in essence, the Vault server is the hardware and software that stores all of your data. Okay, it is just a single machine that stores all of your engineering and design data. Now the Vault client comes in two forms. It comes in a standalone application and an integrated application add-in. Now you access the files from within the Vault client that runs on your workstation, and you use the standalone client to perform common tasks on all the files and folders within the Vault. And then within each application that you run, be it Inventor or AutoCAD, AutoCAD Electrical, Plant 3D, Revit, no matter what it be, you use the built-in client to seamlessly work with the files associated with that application. So summing all that up, the server is what contains all your files, and you use the client on your local workstation to access those files and manage and associate themselves with those files. So we're now going to talk a little bit about copy design. Now, copy design is one of the most commonly used actions within Vault, no matter what flavor it is, being the basic Vault Workgroup or Vault Professional. Now, I'm going to use Autodesk Inventor here as an example. Now, copy design will take an entire Inventor assembly structure, including all of the related 2D drawings and 3D models, to derive a new design. Now, copy design will preserve all the relationships and will eliminate hours and hours of rework. For example, it'll take a part and the related drawing file, and it'll copy them and assign them new names. The new part and the new drawing file are fully associated to each other. The new dimensions and the new view layout from the original source document are preserved within the new drawing. Now, from within the copy design dialog box, you can choose whether you want to copy the design, reuse it, exclude or replace different parts. You can define a new naming scheme for the files in the new design. Alternatively, you can choose to add a prefix or a suffix to the new files automatically. If the original file names end in an integer, you can choose to automatically increment those names. You can also rename presentation files and drawing files to match the names of their direct part or assembly source. Okay, so whether you're just completely creating a new design or slightly modifying an existing design, you can use copy design to do that quickly and efficiently within Vault. Now, I will show the copy design dialog box when we come to look at Vault in a few minutes. So I'm just going to move on to talking about revisions and versions and what the differences between these are. Now, a lot of people, when they're using Vault, they get confused between what a version is and what a revision is. Now, a version is just an iteration of a document and its metadata that has been committed to Vault. Now, if you think about a part, you check a part out from Vault, you modify it in some shape or form, be it just a property value or a dimension, such as you're changing the diameter of a hole or the length of an extrusion, no matter what it be, and then you check it back into Vault, it becomes version 2. You check it out, check it in again, it becomes version 3, so on and so forth. Now, with revisions, a revision is a collection of the file versions rolled up into an object that is displayed to you. So after a revision is created, edits are contained within that revision until a new revision is created. So any changes that are made and committed to the system, the user sees no change between the revision label. So if we talk about, say, a document that is created and it's given the revision label A, the user checks it out, makes a couple of changes, checks it back in, checks it in and out a few times, the revision label remains at revision A. Only when the user does some sort of revision bumping action will a new revision be created. A way to do this in Vault Professional is by using the revise command. So this will up the revision from revision A to revision B, and then any subsequent edits will be collected within that revision B. Now, it's generally up to the user to create a new revision of the file or set of files when a milestone is met, but you can also put this into a lifecycle transition. So when a part goes from, say, work in progress to for review, it'll bump from revision A to revision B. But we'll look at this a little bit later on when we cover when we actually check into Vault to have a look at a few things. Now, a little bit of a chat about categories and rules. Now, when I talk about categories in Vault, categories are a powerful method of not only classifying different types of files, but they're a great way of automatically assigning other behaviors. So when you combine this with rules, as a user adds new files to Vault or migrates files from, say, Vault Basic, lifecycle definitions, states, revision schemes, revision levels, and specific properties can automatically be assigned to these files. This ensures a very high level of both consistency and completeness to the data. Now, categories give you a great flexibility in categorizing your files that best suits your organization. So within categories, you can visually identify different file types. You can assign one or more lifecycle states based on that category, or specify a default lifecycle definition for new files or migrated files. You can assign one or more revisions based on a category. Again, you can specify a default revision scheme based on that category, and also the initial revision for new or migrated files. You can also, thirdly, you can assign existing properties or metadata to a file based on a category. When you link this in with rules, rules allow you to automatically categorize a file based on one or more file property values. This gives you the ability to assign a category when a file is added to Vault using Vault Explorer or the CAD add-ins from Inventor, AutoCAD Plant, AutoCAD Electrical, and so on. Now, rules work a bit like the advanced find workflow in Vault, in that you can specify a list of conditions to be met based on property values, be that user-defined values or system property values, or can be based on a file name when the file is added. Okay, so it's a great way of when you check files in, it'll automatically get assigned to its own particular category, and then that category will tell it to use a certain revision style or a certain lifecycle state. Again, we will look at this a bit further when we actually jump into Vault and have a bit of a look. Now, I've mentioned life cycles a few times, so let's have a little bit of a talk about life cycles. So life cycle management refers to the process a company uses to track its products from inception through to retirement. So as your product is conceived, defined, designed, tested, revised, and then produced, it will transit through various stages that are often quite specific to that particular company. However unique, though, the conception of lifecycle management is practiced by most companies in some shape or form. So everyone's using lifecycle management in some way. Now, the lifecycle state is changed using the change state command, but before the state is changed, criteria, if there's any sort of set, needs to be checked. Plus, the user must have the correct permissions to change the state. So, you don't want any sort of draftsman or any user that wants to release a file. It needs to be checked first. So once it goes from work in progress to for review, it should be taken out of the draftsman's hands. So he has no say in is it approved, because it needs to be checked by a higher level. And then once the change state is performed, any actions specified are actioned, and then the user has an option of specifying any comments to inform others why the state was changed. So that's a little bit of an introduction of sort of what we're going to cover today. So just a bit of a briefing down on it. So let's have a bit of a look at Vault Professional now. So I'm gonna jump into the Vault client and give you a bit of a tour around the Vault client. So if I just sort of close down these, so the Vault, you've got your Vault client, which sits on your desktop, which is this icon here, and I've launched up my Vault. Now there's 3 or 4 main areas within the Vault client that obviously you need to be wary of. So down the left hand side here we have our navigation pane. So this is where you'll see all your folder structure. So I've got my Project Explorer at the top level, and then I've got all my folders beneath that, all organized via project. Now this main area here is just classified as the main pane. So this is where you'll see all your sub-assemblies, your assemblies, your drawings, your DWF files, that sort of stuff. So within here I've got specific columns. So I've got the name, the state that the file's at, the revision, and also the category symbol. Now what I see here I can change. So if I go up to my View tab, sorry, not my and Customize View. Sorry, I just lost it there for a bit. If I click on the Customize View, I can change what fields I see. Okay, so I can choose whether I want to see category or I don't want to see category, and so on and so forth. Now, on the right hand side here is the properties. So if I select an assembly such as my main GA here, down the right hand side it loads up all the properties to do with that assembly. And down the bottom here I have my preview pane. So down here I can see the number of versions. So at the minute there is just one version of this file. As we check that in and out, you'll see that change. I can also see what's being used within this file. So under here displays all the children to do with that assembly. If I look at one of the children, if I go into subcomponents and select a child, I can also see on the Where Used tab it'll show the parents. So in the Uses tab it'll show all the children, and in the Where Used tab it'll show all the parents. Again, it's just got one version, so it's got the initial check-in comment, who it was checked in by, what state, what revision it's at. Now, talking a little bit about the permissions. So, obviously, different users have different roles. So, in my administration settings, I'm just going to go to my global settings. This is where I add and create my users. So within my vault, I've got administrator, I've got myself, and I've got an account called review. I'm going to use that account for reviewing my models once they go to the for review stage, the review lifecycle. But each individual account is given a role. So if I say, for instance, create a new user, as you type it in, you've got roles. So there's all these different types of roles that you can give different users. Now, if you want to see what each individual role is capable of, if you go down to the view permissions per role, you can select a role, such as administrator has access to do everything, as you can see there. If I go and say select a document consumer role, he's only pretty much got read access. So all he can do is log into Vault, have a look at certain things, which is suitable for, say, admin staff who just want to go in and look at documents, let's say. Excel documents, Word documents, or might just want to look at bill of materials. You've got views such as the document editor who's got check-in and check-out permissions. He can add files, add folders, create folders. So depending on what you want to let your users do, you can assign them the correct roles within Vault. Now, I was talking a little bit about copy design, so I'm just going to bring up the copy design dialog box and show you what it's all about. Now, let's say, for instance, I wanted to create an assembly similar to my main GA, but obviously not identical. So I would go just right-click on my main GA at the top level and go to copy design. Now, this brings up my copy design dialog box. Now, I've got my copy design from and to, which is just the source and destination for your copy design. Now, it lists all of the files, so it's brought up all of the children to do with that assembly. And it's got these two symbols. So at the minute, it's just copying the top level, but it's reusing all of the children. Now, it's now just down to the user to say, okay, what do I want to reuse and what do I want to create a new copy of? So it's just a simple case of going through and changing the icons, just left-clicking on the icon and changing it to copy. As you can see, when it turns to copy, it's just adding a prefix onto the end there. Okay, so it's just adding. Now, you can totally change that file name if you want by just manually typing it in. And you can also, by just select the end there, you can replace the file with a completely different one if you want. Okay. So then it's just a case of going through one by one, selecting each individual file, saying I want to copy this one, reuse that one, excluding this one, replacing that one, and then it's done. It will create a copy of that assembly into the destination file. Okay, so that's what the copy design does. Now let's look at the categories, the rules, the life cycles and revisions, and just seeing how that's all set up. So if I go into my tools, administration and Vault settings, on my behaviors tab I have all my life cycles, revisions and categories here. So first of all, let's have a look at categories. So within my categories, I've created some file categories called Inventor assemblies, Inventor drawings, parts and Office documents. Okay, so as files are checked in, I want them to go on the correct category. Now if I just look at, say, the first one here, Inventor assemblies, down the bottom here, I can say that I've assigned for Inventor assemblies to go on the basic release process lifecycle. So as soon as something is assigned to be an Inventor assembly, it will use that lifecycle. Now I've also assigned a default revision, so again, as soon as something goes on that category, it gets assigned to the alphabetic format, so that'll just be primary A and then A.1, A.1.1 and so on and so forth. You can also assign properties. I know I haven't assigned any properties in this, but in here you would assign certain properties that you want to be assigned. Now you can assign more than one revision cycle or more than one life cycle. You just add in a new one, okay, and then you get the option to choose when you're changing the state and changing the life cycle. Now the same thing with Inventor drawings, but if I look at, say, Office documents, I've assigned, if I look at this, I've got the basic release process. If I look at Office documents, I've assigned the simple release process. So for instance, on Office documents, I don't want it to go through the same life cycle as Inventor assemblies. Okay, so I've set a different life cycle. Okay, but we'll look at that when we look at the life cycle options. Now, how does a certain object go on that category? So that's where the rules come into play. Now, if I look at my Inventor assemblies, all I've said is I did a condition. I've said, okay, does the file name contain the value .iam, which is the extension for an Inventor assembly? So all I did was just drop down here, go to file name, and then contains, and I entered the value. So as soon as a file is checked in, it has a look at it and says, okay, is it on the file name .iam, and then assigns it to that category. Now, when I add a part in, because I'm going to check out this assembly and add a new part to it, you'll see that it'll automatically go on the Inventor parts. So that one looks and says, does the file name contain IPT, which is the extension for an Inventor part file. Okay, so we had a little bit of a look at the life cycles, so let's have a quick look here. Now, most of my files are just set at the minute to the basic release process, which is work in progress, for review, released, then obsolete. But there's a little bit more detail behind that. What happens when it goes from work in progress to review, and who is allowed to take it from work in progress to review? So let's have a little look at that. So if I click on Edit, now at the minute I'm set to work in progress, so let's have a look at the transitions. So when it goes from work in progress to review, I want it, so at the minute there's no specified criteria. It can be moved from work in progress to review at any time. Security, there is no security. Anybody can move it from work in progress to review. But the actions, I want it to bump the primary revision. So as soon as it goes from work in progress to review, it'll go from revision A to revision B. Okay, so that's what's going to happen when it goes from work in progress to review. Now, it's different when it comes to for review. When it goes to review, I don't want my design team to have access to the file. It's gone for review. It's in the reviewer's hands. I don't want the design team to have access to it. So if I select for review and have a look at the security, I've allowed the review, but I've disabled modify and the delete for myself, iCross. The administrator, again, has got full access. And again, if I look at the transmission, if it goes back from review to work in progress, I want it to bump the secondary revision. So it went from A to B when it's from work in progress to released, and then it'll go to B.1 when it goes back to work in progress. Or if it goes to released, if it goes from for review to released, it's not going to bump anything, but it will check that the child files are released, because you don't want your overall assembly being released if the children haven't been checked and reviewed. Okay, so it won't allow you to release a file until all the dependents are released as well. So we'll see that later on when I come to release some files. So that's just looking at the basic release process, but also I had the simple release process, which was for Office documents. So that is just work in progress to released. Okay, I don't want my Office documents or my PDFs or my Excel documents or anything like that to go through for review, obsolete, and yada yada yada. I just want it to go straight from work in progress to released. Okay, so that's what lifecycle they follow. Alternatively as well, we've got the revisions. So I've got two forms. I've got alphabetical and numeric. So alphabetical is just A, B, C, D, and so on. Primary, secondary, and tertiary just goes A.1, A.1.1. Okay, and numeric does 1, 1.1, and so on. You can create your own and create your own format. It's totally up to you. For this webinar, I am just going to stick with the basic alphabetic format. Okay. So what I've shown there is when a file comes in, it looks at the rules. It says, okay, are you on the IPT, or do you have a file name with IAM? It automatically gets assigned to that category, and in that category will say use the particular lifecycle and use a particular revision. Okay, so let's see that in action. So let's jump over to Inventor. Now, we've just been working in the standalone application as the Vault client, which is the one that's sat on my desktop. Now we're going to look at the application add-in for Inventor. So this is Inventor 2014. If I look at my Vault tab, I have my integration with Vault. So at the minute I'm currently logged in. So if you're not logged in, you just click login, enter your user credentials, and it logs you in. But instead of using the standard open command, you use the open from Vault command. So then that looks into the Vault. Okay, so instead of displaying your local C drive, it displays the Vault folder structure. So I'm going to load up my main GA here, and I'm going to open this up. Okay, so I'm just opening up my main assembly. What I'm going to do is just add in a part. Okay, so here's my assembly. Okay, now I'm going to add a part in, and then I'm going to check it back into Vault and show that that part goes on its own particular layer. Sorry, not a particular layer, its own particular category. So I'm going to go place. I'm just going to place this plate in. Okay, let's just constrain this plate. So I'm just going to rotate this round, and then constrain this into there. And then I'll constrain this. So what I'm doing here is just fully constraining up my model. And then okay. So I've now placed my plate on my assembly there. Okay, so you can see the plate on here. It's appeared in my browser, so I'm just going to save my design. Yep. And now I'm going to check it back into Vault. Now the great thing with working with Vault is all your files are stored on your server, so you haven't got your local C drive getting built up with tons and tons of information. But when you work with a file and you check it out from Vault, it takes a copy from Vault and places it on your local hard drive. So you're always working with the file as local to improve your speed. And once you're finished with it, it takes it back into Vault and gets it off your hard drive. Again, keeping your hard drive free and clean. Okay. So now I'm just going to go back to my Vault tab, and I'm going to go to check-in. Now at this point, yes, it's saying yes, I'm checking in my main assembly, but I'm also checking in my plate. And I'm going to add in a comment to say added plate 1. Okay. So it's saying, yeah, we're adding in the plate. And that's now my plate added back into Vault. So let's jump back over to Vault and just do a refresh. And you can see that it's added my plate in there. Now it's jumped on the for review state. That was me making a bit of a mistake before, but I'll come back to that in just a sec. If I go to my main GA assembly, you can see that that is up to revision 2. Okay, now that is just because I've checked it out, I've made a modification, and I've checked back in again, so it went up to revision 2. So if I click show all versions here, you can see there's the initial check-in and there's the added plate. Okay, now let's say for instance this assembly is now done, I'm happy with it, I'm now going to submit this for review. So as you can see, plate 1 is already for review there, so I'm just going to change the state of this overall assembly. So I'm going to go change state. It picks the default basic process because that's the one that's assigned to that category, and you can see that that part there has been assigned to the Inventor part category. and I'm going to set it to be for review. Now as well, you can see that I don't have the ability to set it for released because I just don't have the permissions. So I'm going to set it to be for review, and I'm going to say please check for review. So I'm just going to type in a comment. It's always best to type in a comment so that the person who is checking it know what it's for, and you can always go, when you go back to previous versions, you can always see, okay, what did I do here, what did I do there, why did I check it out, why did I check it in. It's always best to put your comments in. So I click OK, and now they're both submitted for review. Now, obviously, it's now locked to me. You can see the padlock, so I need to log in as a different user. So I'm going to log myself out, and I'm going to log in as that review account that we looked at before, because these have the ability to check the review files. So I go to my chain. You can see it's not locked to this user. So at this point, the guy who's reviewing it will, check out the files, have a look, double check everything over, and then, say, okay, is it ready for release, or it doesn't need to go back for work in progress. In this instance, I am going to check it back for work in progress because a modification needs to be made. So what I'm going to do is just select my files, go back to change state, so just on the right click menu, go back to change state, and I'm going to change it back to work in progress. Okay, and I'm going to say, change material of plate 1 to stainless steel. Okay, so the guy who's reviewed it's not happy with the material, doesn't have the right finish, or they don't have that sort of product, so they're saying change the material, please. So it goes back to work in progress. So now again we have to go back to my user account and then make the change. But you can see that the revision has went up in the secondary, so it's B.1 and A.1. Okay, so that's working exactly how I expected. Now, the amount of time this would be taking if you didn't do it automatically, plus you've got records of it, it's all documented within Vault. The person who's, reviewed its name's next to it, any notes, the categories assigned to it, you don't have to, remember what revision it's taking. Everything's automatically being done for you. Now, when in part 2 of this webinar, in 2 weeks' time, we will look at ECOs, which ECOs will notify users by email and in your work list down the left-hand side of things that have been assigned to for review, or if you need to check something, it will notify you. Okay, so that's what the ECOs do. So again, let's just log out again, log back in as myself as the user account. So I've logged back in as myself. So if this was an ECO, I'd have a notification to say, please have a look at your work and please check it over. But I can see that on plate 1 it's telling me to change the material to stainless steel. So yep, great. What I'll do is if I go back to Inventor, I'll open up that file. Now it's always best to check in and check out files from the application. That is the best practice that we do preach here at Cadgroup. So I'm just going to open up my file. So I'm going to open up my main assembly. Yes, I want to check it out. Okay. So I've checked it out and I'm going to make an edit to my plate. Okay. Which again I will need to check out as well. Okay, so I go back into here, I'm going to change it from being mild steel to stainless steel. Click save. It's updated here, yep. And then again I would check it back in with my notes to say that I've changed it. So it's checking in both files. Say change material to stainless steel. And that checks my files back in the Vault. Okay, so yep, it says if I just do a quick refresh, again you can see that the versions are jumping up but the revisions are staying the same. So that's, as I was talking about before, all the changes made stay within that revision until either you manually change it or a revision bumping action knocks it up. Okay, so again, I would now set it to be for review. So I go to revise. Sorry, not revise, change state. Set it to be for review. say change material, please check. Then that goes back to review. You can see that the increment has updated and it's added a new version in the bottom there. So change material, please check. So I'll log back in as my reviewer. Then the reviewer would check, see that the material is great, and then he would release it for manufacture if that was the next stage in your life cycle. Okay. Now again, you can create your own life cycles that have as many stages as you want. Now, but you'll see that I can't release this yet. So if I go to release the GA and go to say change state to be released, it won't let me. Okay. It won't let me. Reason being is that the children are not released. It will not let you release the assembly until all the children have been checked and released. Now, that pretty much sums it up for part 1. When we come back for part 2, in 2 weeks' time, we will be covering the rest. Obviously, the amount of content covered within Vault Professional is a bit too much to put into one webinar. So part 2 will be covering ECOs and the web client and other topics such as that. Now, if I just jump back to my presentation. If you do have any further questions on Vault before part 2 comes up, please contact Cadgroup on the website displayed on the screen. If you wish to register for the part 2 webinar, it is on our website or on our LinkedIn profile. So I'll take any questions. So if you could have any questions, please ask. Okay, there doesn't seem to be any questions coming through. Okay, well, if you do think of anything while, after this is finished, please again